I'm going to turn into my worst employee ever because I'm becoming prideful. Hi, my name's Devin. Today I own several multi-million-dollar companies. We started with $5,000 in a credit card. I don't know the easy way. I only know the hard way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Whiteboard Entrepreneur Podcast, where I give straightforward advice to fuel the entrepreneur in all of us. Today I'm going to tell you a story about the worst employee I've ever hired. And listen, that worst employee was actually one of my CEOs. And I blame myself for this hire because I should have known. I should have known when I was interviewing him that he was not the type of person that I wanted to lead one of my companies. And how I knew that, or I at least should have known that, was during the interview process. We had probably 2 or 3 different interviews live. In the last one, I took him out to lunch and we went and had like a 1.5, 2 hour lunch. And I just really wanted to get to kind of know him as a person. And so we were chit-chatting back and forth. And, I was asking him questions and he was asking me questions because he was also interviewing us. And I finally asked him, I said, so, what type of business and leadership books or, peer groups are you a part of? And he's like, oh, I don't do any of that. And I was kind of so thrown back by his response that I didn't even know how to ask a secondary or follow-up question. I kind of just changed the subject and went to something else. But what resonated with me was that he was so very prideful that I could tell from his answer that he thought I could be teaching those. I don't need to learn from anybody. And it stuck with me because about 1.5 years later, we had to let the person go. He had almost bankrupted the company. All of the people were absolutely miserable. Again, this CEO was the worst hire that I ever had. And I should have known it because he basically told me he knows everything and he doesn't need to learn anything. And I was so convicted. I'm like, I need to learn from this. I need to learn when I hire people to make sure that they have humility, to make sure that there's someone who's always willing to be growing and learning. And recently, I personally became very convicted because the reason I asked him that question back in the day was because I had 2 or 3 books I was reading through at the time. And I was following certain people on podcasts. And every year I had a commitment that I was going to go to a conference. And I met with different peers all the time. And we gave each other advice and counsel, and we helped each other through business. And I started thinking I'm going to make sure I never hire anyone who's not like that. Well, now here I am, fast forward 10, 12 years later, I'm super convicted because I'm not doing what I used to do, right? I'm not reading the books that I used to read. I'm not reaching out to peers and I'm not going to conferences the way that I used to go to them. And I'm like, I'm going to turn into my worst employee ever because I'm becoming prideful. And this happens to entrepreneurs. This happens to all leaders. This happens to people when you start to have success and you start to see these, great, exciting things happen in your life. And so you start to go, you know what? I don't need to take the time to read this book because, I already pretty much know it, right? Or, hey, I don't need to spend the time to go and meet with my peers and have them speak into my life or a mentor speak into my life because, I should be speaking in other people's lives, right? I don't need someone else to tell me what I should be doing or providing myself guidance. And this is what happens. We start to have success and then we turn into exactly what we swore we would never be. When I interviewed that guy, and like I said, 1.5 years later, when we let that person go, I swore that I would never be like that. I would never be prideful. I would always be learning, always be growing. Now, fast forward, and I'm having to learn that lesson over again personally. I'm challenging you with this today because, listen, you probably have had some success. There's probably been points of time in your life when you've been devouring business books, leadership books, listening to 3 or 4 different podcasts, having people that like you reach out to all the time with questions. And now over time, maybe the success has kind of turned you into a prideful person who thinks, I don't need that. I already know that. I could write the book on that. And it's not to say that that's not true, because hopefully you have grown. But it doesn't mean that that's where we stop. When you stop, you become exactly like my worst employee ever, that CEO who was so prideful, because I guarantee you that guy knew what he was doing. He was very intelligent. He had great leadership skills in the past, but he stopped growing. He stopped developing. And from that time, he became so prideful that he was unteachable. We must remain teachable. We must stay in a state of growth, of learning, and humility in order to continue to grow and to lead our businesses and pursue our dreams. I'm Devin, and this is the Whiteboard Entrepreneur Podcast.